Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Friday, the 13th of January, comes to you from London. And I've been on the road for quite a few weeks in Asia, in the Middle East, and it's good to be back here at my desk in my office using Updata on my Bloomberg. I've been using it on Reuters for the last few weeks, so here I'm running Updata on Bloomberg. Remember, you can run Updata on lots of different data services. Today it's just Bloomberg. So we start by looking at currencies, then stocks, stock markets, some commodities, and then some bellwether tech stocks, because that's really what tends to be driving the market a bit at the moment. So the big news is really the dollar weakness is still kicking in. US markets came back a little bit last night. FTSE is still on its mammoth run. We're day 12 there, is consecutive days going up. And then just commodities coming off a little bit. Gold, the standout, has been performing pretty well. So we start with the dollar index. We're still in this bearish territory below the cloud. We do have a couple of downside targets of about 2%. So that those targets are there, but we do have support here as well on the point and figure chart. And of course, we have these long-term upside targets. Way too early to say whether we've got a sell-off in the dollar. We had this breakout last year on the weekly. That's still the theme. We often come back to test the break level before we run again. So it's way too soon to call this a failed breakout. Taking a look at the euro, we see here we're bullish on the euro in the short term. We've got these upside targets 107, 109, which we've talked about. There is some resistance here. We're at 106.35 this morning. Will we get through that resistance level? That's the key thing. And of course, we still have all these dire targets hanging over us. And this recent fall on the euro sets us up for another new downside target. So when we go lower than that, we activate a new downside target if we see new lows. It might be construed that the euro is finding support at these levels. It's not maybe convincing enough of a break, but it is bearish below the cloud on the medium and the long term, still looking pretty dire. If we look at the Japanese yen, dollar falling back against the yen, consistent with dollar weakness this last several days, and we're just seeing that here where the dollar has just reached a crescendo, having really had an amazing run for 2 weeks. It's 2 months. It's no big surprise that we see a little bit of a fall off, quite a big fall this week compared to previous weeks. Taking a look at sterling, of course the key thing with sterling is we've just been in bearish mode pretty well for a year or two now, and we are just sort of testing the cloud at the moment, coming back into sort of bullish territory. We do have this 125.22 upside, but we also have this new downside target with a recent sell-off to 115.60. If you want to know what is happening in the shorter term, go to the 1 minute chart, press the T key on your system, and you'll get the trends and targets. This 115.50 target, 5% downside, is the target that's a little bit worrying on that 1 cent chart. So we're seeing here that we have 122 we were through. We've got 120.08, which we actually went through as well. Remember, if you go past these downside targets, that tends to be bearish. So that exceeding the targets to the downside is not a good sign, and so that 115 target is 115.50 is hanging over us still. Keep an eye on those 1 minute charts for any key changes. Looking at sterling against the euro, falling away again just at the moment. Euro strength, the key here. We did see a point here where sterling was recovering a little bit, but it's just pulling away again. So looking pretty weak even against the euro for the moment, and again downside targets, although the euro does have these very big scary downside targets as well. Swiss franc, we're seeing again sterling just not managing to hold the gains in the high 120s, back to the low 120s here. We're still just bullish above the cloud, but to be honest, short term and long term doesn't look great. We've got even targets down to parity. This one not yet activated, but this one on the long-term chart is. So £1, 1 Swiss franc buys you a £1 sterling. Quite scary if you're a skier. Taking a look at the Australian dollar, we really see the fall away here. It was at 170, now 162. We've been nudging, and we're just turning back into that bearish territory. So the Australian currency looking pretty strong against sterling. Moving to stock markets, the S&P 500 just pulled back a little bit overnight, but realistically, we are holding on to the gains we've seen. Great charts. We're bullish above on all time frames here. way too early to say that we're at top. Remembering calling a top is a mug's game. If we look at the one minute chart, press the T key on your system. We've got 2406. That's on the 3x3. If we go to the one point box size here, that's just by clicking down here. We see 2309. That's really breaking that 2300 level. We do have a downside target here to 2221, saying we'll pull all the way back. But remember, the downside targets when we're trending up like this are likely to not be met. It's the trend state that says that. And we see here in the Nasdaq again where we're bullish above all three, more bullish on this 60-minute chart, more clearly above the cloud here, and some upside targets, about 1.7% to aim for here, and quite a lot of targets here on the long-term chart as well. Taking a look at the 1-minute chart here, we see if we press the T code, our system targets of 4% upside. That's on the 10x3. If we go down to the 5x3, we're nearly reaching the targets here. And if we're going to go hyper short term, go to that 1x3 chart. We've got a downside target hanging over us here. We break again, breaking here. We deactivate that downside target. No really big thrust targets yet to play for on this chart. So we might just see Friday the 13th being a little bit of a slow day for the US market. And the Dow again just really struggling to get to that 20,000 level. We are bullish above the cloud still on all three charts, but we're just hitting a bit of chop here in the short term. And again, if we go to the 1-minute chart, we could probably ascertain whether this is going to happen today or not. Go right down in the box sizes. For the Dow being such a big number, the 5x3 is probably fine. And we do see downside targets to 19,400, 19,600, 19,700. Quite a few downside targets here on the Dow. Again, if we make to new highs, all of those get negated. No clear thrust targets. So looking unlikely for today, but watch on the 1-minute chart for any targets. The Russell we've just turned a little bit bearish on. It's had an amazing run, so no great surprises there. This is the sideways range we're seeing here in the chart. This little spike here is actually the move down and then the recovery on the 60-minute chart. So we just do see here that the Russell 2000, just broader US stocks having a little bit of a pullback. The futures in London this morning just very slightly up, but really almost unchanged. As I mentioned, the FTSE 100 into its 12th day of consecutive rises. That's the first time that's ever happened in the history of the FTSE since the 1980s. So really the UK market, just look at that run, just steady run. Who would have predicted that? Just right up there running. Here we are above the cloud on the 60-minute chart, just a beautiful trend. No clear upside targets on the short-term chart, but the medium and long-term charts have really great upside targets as well. 7% here, 12 and 24% respectively on the 1% chart. And of course making new all-time highs after 15 years in the doldrum compared to the US, where the US markets was breaking to new highs quite some time ago. And we see here again on the FTSE 250 now breaking that 2015 high. That's good news, and we do have 4% upside here on quite a few charts, so it looks like mid caps will do quite well as well. The DAX just holding back a little bit in the short term. We do have a potential downside, but we're not quite there until we make new lows. We're just holding the cloud at the moment, so still quite bullish. Nikkei up just under 1% in Asia, so again looking pretty good. Shanghai, we are down slightly. We're still quite bearish in the long term here. A little bit worrying this pattern here. We're just starting to roll over. We're above on the lagging line, but if we go much lower, we activate a new 10% downside target. China still not quite the best looking market there is, and it is a little bit of a worry. The Hang Seng looking a little bit better, but not through on the weekly yet, and again much the same. So Hong Kong stocks do just still have this China effect hanging over them as well. India looking great on the short term, 1.4% upside still there to play for, finding support on the medium term chart and long term targets of 60% upside. So this is a big secular potential market here. We're not quite through on the middle cloud, but if you're looking at Indian funds long term, the charts do look good. The Aussie market, we do have a little downside target here that's now activated, but we've got 4 clear upside targets dominating, finding support on the cloud. Australia now closing for the week, but we do see here that it's looking still pretty bullish, so pretty good all round. Moving to commodities, Brent crude, taking a look at Brent. We see here we're through the 60-minute cloud again, bullish in all three time frames. 58.33 is the upside target if we can break to new highs above 56.30, say. We do have these targets still into the 70s, high 50s and 70s. That's where we're going. High 50s next by the looks of things. Remember to take a look at the 1 minute chart if you're trading crude. Just press the T key. 59 is the target there. That's suggesting a breakout of this range. And we're seeing here 57.1, so that's 2% upside. But that target there, 59, is just sitting there, breaking us to new highs, and that is complying with the targets that we're seeing on the medium to long-term charts. WTI, much the same picture, upside here to 55. Nat gas really moving again. We've made through the cloud here. We've got lots. Look at all those thrust targets there. We can take a look at that on the chart. We've got 346, 357, 369, 374. Lots of upside there. And again, if we want to know what's going on in the short term, if you're trading nat gas, as many of our clients in Houston are, you take a look at that. 351, 362, 3.5, 6.7% upside. So it is still there to play for. Softs down slightly. We're seeing a bit of a mixed picture. Sugar up 1.5%, but the real one to look at the moment is gold, and it's been strong the start of the year. Really has got off to a good start here. We're bearish below the cloud, but look at that run, just really steadily moving up. Looks like the lagging line has been finding support in the cloud, and on the short term we're rising strongly here. The key thing is, I've been asked, is this a recovery in the gold price? Well, on this weekly chart, yes, but when we certainly don't have any thrust targets yet, so it's too hard to say, and we are just below the cloud. The key sign for us really is in this 60-minute chart, 12.25, 12.23, and we have broken the trend. So the short-term trend is pretty strong at the moment, but we are likely to hit some longer-term resistance around the sort of 12.30 mark, which is where those targets are to. And again, if you're a gold watcher short term, take a look at that 1 minute chart on your system. Press the T keys. 12.38, 12.26. We're seeing it all there. That's the $2 chart. The $1 chart we're seeing here. 12.38. If we make to new highs, 12.10. We did touch above the 1200 level yesterday. Looks like we will get back above that quite soon. Silver down very, very slightly this morning in London. But again, much the same picture as gold. Taking a look at US government bonds, the 10-year, we're below here on the 60-minute chart, but the long and medium-term charts still pretty bullish all around. Taking a look at some of the bellwethers, Apple bullish on all time frames here at the moment, upside targets. If we look at Google, much the same picture, 1.5% upside in the short term, 3%, and then a massive 40% in the long term. Taking a look at Amazon, much the same picture, now coming through on the cloud on the lagging line, turning bullish on all three time frames. 11% upside is the short term target there. Amazon putting in a strong recovery, as is Facebook, really starting to run here. One of my stocks that I hold, so I should declare that. And Facebook just looking great in this trend, and lots of upside targets. Again, if we make new highs here, that will negate these downside targets, and we've got this just one, not a very big potential upside in the short term, but we've gone sideways, and we're breaking to run again. Facebook looking pretty strong again. Microsoft not looking as strong, and we're just seeing here we're in a bit of a bear phase in the short term, but the longer term targets are there. Last of all, Nvidia, my best performing stock over the last several months, has tripled, and it's still continuing to look good on the long term, but we might just be starting to see a little bit of a sell-off here in the medium term. Not a real indication to sell yet, just turning a little bit bearish on the cloud. Not a great surprise after running so much. That's it for today. Until Monday, happy charting. Have a great weekend. See you then.